Hello, everybody. Welcome to Charting with Dan, where we are covering the latest in the box office. I'm Dan Murrell. Joining me this week, Danielle Radford.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's Charting with Dan's.
Charting with Dan's. I'm just going through the office. I'm recruiting everyone to do this.
One of these days, we're all going to learn how to chart. And then you can set us free like
exactly.
the baby birds.
Fly free. This week, Danielle, we're all putting our clown shoes on because It Chapter 2 opened both domestically and in most major markets worldwide. Mm-hmm. And as expected, it was a dominant force. It fell short of some of the outer projections that some people thought that it might, which we'll talk about, but still a solid performance for a sequel to a movie that... with critics didn't quite hit as well as the first one. Box office wise, those still did well. Audiences, the cinema score I think was the same. It was a B+. But it seems like it did well, and it was received pretty well, but not quite the same smash breakout success that the first film was.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of expected that simply because of, when you split that up into the adults, into the children, we always knew the children's story is going to be the one that most people remember the fondest, and the adults are where things start kind of like starting to lag. So I honestly, I knew it was going to do big. But from people I've spoken to, most people actually seem to really like it, so...
I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
It was enough for me to like in there, but I thought it was a bit of a
enough
meandered.
It for it.
Enough it for it. A lot of it in it. Let's look at the top 5 for the weekend. As I mentioned, It Chapter 2. No colon. Had to look that up. No colon. It's just called It Chapter 2.
Well, look at you.
It Chapter 2 is the number one film. $91 million. That is good. That's good because the budget for the film, while it doubled from the first film, it's double the budget of the first movie.
Cast, right?
Largely a cast. I mean, you got to get McAvoy, you got Chastain, you got Bill Hader. You're casting a lot of stars in this film. Still made for $70 million. So it was double the budget, but the first movie was made responsibly. This movie, even though double the budget, still $70 million, which, given what it's going to make worldwide, this movie's doing just fine.
Yeah.
No problem there. That would obviously the number one movie of the weekend domestically. So let's look at where that falls in a few different areas. The first one being domestic horror openings. The 2017 It had the top slot. Now in the record books, It Chapter 2 has the second slot. As you can see, back in 2017, It opened to $123 million. It Chapter 2 opens to $91 million. Now, what constitutes horror is a continuing debate on this show and elsewhere. Some people count I Am Legend as horror. Some people don't. I do. I put it in the horror genre. Some people don't. That's fine, whatever. It's number 3, 2018's Halloween, and Us there at number 5. And I think the thing when you look at that graphic is really how the record books for horror have been rewritten since the first It movie comes out, because 4 of those top 5 are It and 3 movies that have come out since. So the genre really has broken out as far as big openings for a lot of films just in the last 2 years.
Yeah, there's definitely been a resurgence of horror that we've seen, and more of a mainstreaming of horror. A lot less of kind of the the spooky kids like horror and they're going to go see it in their theater. And no, these are huge movies and they're opening big, which is great for people who are really into that genre. I am not one, but I appreciate those who are.
It swings back and forth because for a long time you have, for a very, very long time, almost every horror movie was rated R. The slasher movies, etc. They kind of, they made their markets on this sort of extreme pushing the boundaries. And then I think you saw in the late 90s into the 2000s, after Scream helped sort of revive the genre, a lot of them went down to PG-13 to sort of try to cash in, and we were there for a while. Your Grudges, your stuff like that. But now it seems like maybe we're taking a swing back towards a lot of them being the R-rated versions. They have to follow the trends, but we're kind of a little more balanced.
Yeah, well, and I would say that another one of the big differences, because there were a lot of these hard R, you had a lot of your Saws, your Hostels, but again, those weren't mainstream because there was so much of the torture porn, and so these are ones where they're still R-rated, but it's not as many gleeful gore.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see how the genre adjusts and goes, and there are always going to be R-rated horror movies that do well, PG-13 ones that do well, but it's fun to watch where it's going and how it's really broken out. But as far as box office numbers, the way that it's broken out, pretty impressive. Although, as always, domestically, inflation numbers change as we go. But that's why we look at things like this, the Bits Index. Let's look at butts in the seats for the horror genre. These are the top top 5 horror openings domestically by estimated tickets sold. Again, I know you're going to debate me. I Am Legend's not a horror movie. Signs isn't a horror movie. First of all, Signs scared the bejesus out of me, so it's a horror movie to me.
Yeah,
it's got monsters in it. It's got jump scares and the crazy stuff. But just looking at butts and seats, it still has the title. Now, this is since they've been tracking openings. I'm sure that there are probably numbers from way back when, before they were able to collect this data, that may challenge this. But also the release strategy was different. It still holds the #1 spot, 13.8 tickets sold in its opening weekend, followed by I Am Legend, Signs from M. Night Shyamalan, It Chapter 2, #4 there, and then Interview with the Vampire at 8.7. Again, people say, well, that's not horror. I think it's gothic horror, first of all.
Horror.
And then,
Sexy gothic horror.
Exactly. And if you want to debate, I did not count The Mummy Returns as horror for the purposes of this list. I thought it was more of an adventure film. Hannibal, I did not count as horror. I think it was more of a thriller, but some people might. It's just the way that it goes. You can never have a consensus on these borderline genre pictures. So
we're not going to go around counting jump scares or...
No. There's no objective criteria that says, oh, okay, these are horror movies and these are not.
Yeah,
horror
you crank the lighting down and now all of a sudden it's a horror movie. But if you turn that brightness up, now it's a thriller.
Let's do something that's a little more objective. Movies that are rated R. We can definitively prove which ones are and aren't rated R. It Chapter 2 also makes a mark in the record books there. It now stands as the 5th highest R-rated opening domestically. Deadpool and Deadpool 2 still have the top 2 spots. 2017's It there at #3. The Matrix Reloaded at #4, and now It Chapter 2 at #5. But again, let's look at how that chart looks when we look at the butts in the seats, how many tickets were sold on opening weekend, and it changes a little bit. Deadpool still has the #1 spot, but The Matrix Reloaded is at #2.
That makes sense.
Followed by 2017's It, then The Passion of the Christ from Mel Gibson at #4. That was a huge hit back in the early part of this century. And then Deadpool 2, which is #2 on the gross, just straight up money list at #5 there. It Chapter 2 is actually number 11 if you're looking at opening weekends by movies that are rated R. However, it should be noted that's not a bad thing because it is still one of only 12 R-rated films released in the current release pattern that have sold more than 10 million tickets at the box office. Only 12 movies have sold 10 million tickets or more. Those 5, which we talked about, It Chapter 2, obviously, and then American Sniper, Hangover Part 2, 50 Shades of Grey, 300, Hannibal, and Logan. That's it. That's the list.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So while it did not reach the heights of the original, it's still in stratified air as far as horror releases, as far as R-rated releases.
Quick question. I don't know if this is something that you've covered or if this is just me being very, very silly. Would there ever be a way to see if maybe a PG movie gets a bump on these R-rated weekends of kids buying that ticket and then sneaking into something else?
That's a good question. We've talked about it because, there was a summer where I saw Dr. Dolittle 5 times. And that movie did very well. I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's hard to judge, even if there is a bump. It's like, well, is it because kids were buying tickets? Is it because... Plus, I don't know. I mean, listen, it's been almost 20 years since I've had to sneak into an R-rated movie. I don't know if it would be easier or harder now to do that.
I don't know either.
I think easier.
I feel like it'd be way easier.
I think it might be easier. Yeah. Because phones, but assigned seating is a bit of a, depending on if the theater has assigned seating or not. That's an X factor. I was at a screening once where like the same 2 people had to get up like 8 times because they obviously had bought tickets for a different movie and they just kept getting kicked out of their seats by someone else.
Don't try to do the good seats when you do that.
Exactly.
Take it to the back and then move down later.
Exactly. Well, no, they didn't get the memo. I wish we could track that. That's a good question. And if you, first of all, don't sneak into movies. But if you have recently, is it easier or harder than it used to be? Because it used to be a little hard because they patrol it pretty well.
Well, and also now everything is on your phone, so it could be very easy to be like, oh, like my phone's off or my battery's dead or womp, womp, womp.
Oh, plus, there's now 20 theaters in a lot of places where there used to be like 8.
Right, and people are going back and forth because folks are getting drinks and folks are getting, caffeine and yada, yada. It's not the same as when you would just go and sit and be sat there.
Yes, and now I will say public service announcement. If you do decide to sneak into an R-rated movie by buying a ticket to another movie and you're not, that's not the worst thing in the world. We all did it. Don't double dip Don't buy
No,
a ticket
no.
for one movie and then just go sit in another movie you didn't pay for. That's called stealing.
You got to do a swap.
Yes.
Even swap.
Yeah, even one for one. One for one. Don't do this double dip. I am not endorsing paying for one movie and then seeing that movie and sneaking into a different movie you didn't pay for. No good. No bueno. Don't do it.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Okay. Now, one thing that cannot quibble, and I was actually shocked at this number, is how popular, just by tickets sold, how superlative these two It films have been when compared to other Stephen King adaptations. I knew that they were popular, but I did not realize how popular they were. Again, this is butts in the seats. This is number of tickets sold in the opening weekend. Look at the difference between It Chapter 2 and then the next highest movie. That
is a drop.
That's a drop. There's almost a 7 million ticket drop off between It Chapter 2, the second most popular Stephen King adaptation as far as tickets sold on opening weekend, to The Green Mile, which was number 3, Pet Sematary at number 4, and 1408 at number 5. But I mean, I knew it was big, but I had no idea the chasm between these two Stephen King movies and all the rest of them. That really surprised me.
And The Green Mile, I remember when that came out. That was kind of huge back then.
Yeah, well, I mean, it came out at the holidays, so it was one of those that maybe didn't open huge, but over time, it actually racked up a really good gross, up there with the highest grossing Stephen King adaptations, and maybe even number 2 or 3 when you look at adjusted lists. But as far as opening weekends, I was shocked that the gulf was that big.
Yeah,
but
that's amazing.
That's pretty incredible. So, a lot of people will quibble about, well, it didn't do as well as the first one, and maybe I mean, that's true, and there's a discussion to be had there as far as, did the runtime hold it back? Is it just that maybe it wasn't quite as sharp with fans as the first film was? But you cannot deny the fact that it is still by far, especially paired with the first movie, the most successful adaptation as far as tickets sold of a Stephen King property. And
it's still going to keep going. We're getting into spooky season.
Yeah, we're getting into spooky season. It's going to hang around. I am curious to see what it does next weekend, and where it ends up, because I don't think, number one, that repeat business is going to be as big, because it is very long.
That's a really long run time.
It's so long. And I also just wonder how the fans of the first one felt about this one, and whether they're going to go back or recommend it as much. We'll see. We're going to continue to track it as we go. So those are our It charts. Let's look at the rest of the box office, starting with the rest of the top 5 domestically. Angel Has Fallen, number 2. That dropped about 50% in its third week. It looks like it's very likely to outgross its predecessor, though, London Has Fallen, so that's what you want out of a sequel. They also cut the budget on that. Good Boys hangs in there at number 3. It has grossed $66 million domestically, and I was looking at it. That actually pushes it above Dark Phoenix.
Whoa.
Good Boys has outgrossed Dark Phoenix domestically, which is pretty shocking. Would not have called that at the beginning of the summer.
Play taps. Just play taps for Dark Phoenix.
Just play taps for Dark Phoenix. Lion King is at number 4. It spends an 8th weekend in the top 5. Wow. That's one more weekend than the original Lion King spent in the top 5. 8
What I
weekends.
tell you about our black dollars?
I'm telling you, it's hanging around there. It's hanging around there. Other movies that have spent 8 weekends in the top 5, The Lion King now ties The Greatest Showman, The Matrix, Rocky IV, Toy Story, Captain Marvel, The Dark Knight, and The Hunger Games, among many others. So if it goes one more week in the top 5, I'll have a whole new list of movies.
Wow.
Pretty crazy, though. It's sticking around. And then Hobbs and Shaw, actually, that flipped from yesterday. The projections yesterday had Overcomer at number 5 and Hobbs and Shaw at number 6. But when the actual grosses came in, Hobbs and Shaw ended up taking that number 5 slot away from Overcomer, which just got edged out at number 6. Speaking of Hobbs and Shaw, again, this is when we talk about looking at the raw numbers versus looking at things like the bits index and adjusted for inflation. Hobbs and Shaw is officially now the 5th highest grossing film in the Fast and Furious franchise domestically. But if you adjust for inflation, it's number 8 out of 9. Oh. So again, that's appearances versus when you look at different factors.
Well, Tyrese only cares about one of those numbers.
Yeah, Tyrese cares about that number. He does not like to see that. Worldwide, it is currently at number 4.
Wow.
For the franchise. So there you go. It's sort of like an empty victory, which is like it's a technical. It's like a victory with an asterisk.
Yeah.
Not not that the movie failed, because it has not, but just the fact that yes, it's in the top 5, but when you poke at that a little bit, it doesn't necessarily hold up very much, especially when you look at it's number 8 out of 9. But that's the way the dollar works.
That's the way the dollar works. And Rock still got all of his. So.
Yeah. Everyone got all their dollars. Jason Statham got lots of dollars.
Ooh,
Everyone got. Helen Mirren got dollars. A lot of people got dollars. Let's look at the top per theater average. It Chapter 2 takes the per theater average just under $20K per theater. In case you were wondering, the 2017 It averaged about $10,000 more per theater and about 500 fewer theaters. So again, a breakdown of the fact that beyond just total box office, on a per theater basis, it was driving about a third more business when it opened 2 years ago. So. Yeah,
makes sense. No, what you would probably remember this. What other movies was it came out around that time?
I believe it was kind of like this one, where it was pretty much, as far as big new releases, the only game in town. I don't remember that weekend specifically, but I do think that the studios largely cleared the path for it. But I would actually have to go back and check and see what its direct competition, if any, was the weekend that it opened. Number 2, by the way, per theater was a documentary called Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice.
Aww.
It averaged about 16,000 playing in 7 theaters. So there you go. Like to throw a little mention to the ones, even if they don't come in first place.
That's nice.
Yeah. If you like Linda Ronstadt.
I do like Linda Ronstadt.
Well, there you go. 7 theaters. Maybe one of them's around here. Maybe you can find it.
I might have to go do that.
There you go. Top 5. Let's go from per theater to worldwide. It Chapter 2, the number 1 movie around the globe. $185 million. There had been talk, perhaps, that it would set the all-time worldwide horror record at $200 million. It did not do that. It actually opened just below the original's worldwide opening number, but still $185 million. Not too shabby. It has opened in just about every major market that it's going to play in. France and Hong Kong open this week. Japan opens in November. And then looking at the rest, they're pretty much holdovers. Hobbs and Shaw, Lion King, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Angel Has Fallen. Quick note, and we'll probably update the graphic next week, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about $10 million away from overtaking Inglourious Basterds as Quentin Tarantino's second highest grossing film worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, pretty crazy, right? Let's look at the 2019 domestic chart. Hobbs and Shaw jumping over How to Train Your Dragon 3 to number 9. How to Train Your Dragon. It looks like it's going to be clown bait. I'm thinking Pennywise is going to gobble up How to Train Your Dragon 3 eventually, but that hung in there. That came out in I want to say March.
Yeah, that's been around for a while.
It's been around for a while.
Good for you, How to Train Your Dragon 3.
Good run, How to Train Your Dragon 3. You'll float down in the sewer. Pretty soon.
Poor Toothless.
Gonna get chomped by Pennywise.
He's got a lot of teeth.
But dragons fly.
That's true.
So you don't even need to float. Yeah, just fly. 2019 worldwide list. Hobbs and Shaw actually took a jump over 2 Chinese releases that we've been talking about. The Wandering Earth and Neja. Hobbs and Shaw now number 7 for the year. Neja number 8, and The Wandering Earth now number 9. Neja is now the top grossing domestic Chinese release. Danielle, did we talk about Neja at all? No, it's.
I don't think we've gotten a chance to talk about that on the show.
Yeah, it's an animated film. A big kind of like spectacle film based on a character that's very popular in Chinese folklore. It's now playing. I've gotten a lot of thank you for people that tweet me and say like, hey, I think it's playing at some theaters here now in North America if you want to check it out. But obviously, from what you can see, a massive success in China.
Yeah.
I think now their second highest grossing film of all time.
Of all time?
Yeah. Pretty nuts.
That's crazy. That's
pretty crazy.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, Neja. No summer movie report this week. We would check it week to week during the summer, but nothing changed. Everything stayed in the same order. So if anything does change, we'll update that on the show. But this week, nothing new to add for the summer movie report. But Danielle, I'm very glad you're here because you can lend a very important perspective.
I still haven't looked at it yet.
Please don't. To a recurring feature that we now have on our show, which is, of course, the Meowdown to Cats. Danielle, we're in the last week of triple digits. We are merely 103 days away from the opening of Cats.
I'm so ready.
If you haven't been watching the show, we are counting down the days until this, whatever this is, opens. Danielle, I did one week, the first week I did this with Spencer. Last week I did it alone. This week I'm very happy to have you here with me because you are the only person that we've had here that has seen Cats.
I know, and you keep insisting that's going to help me make sense of it for you, and it's just not.
Okay.
It's simply not going to make sense no matter what I say.
Well, maybe you can at least round out the edges on this week's cat. If you we're introducing you to a new cat every week because I don't know anything about cats, and so I figured to introduce myself and to introduce you, the audience, to some of these characters so you don't go in completely blind. We are devoting the end of the show every week to introduce a new cat from the musical/movie Cats. And this week's cat, I'm very happy. This may be my favorite one yet. We are talking, of course, about Macavity the Mystery Cat, to be played by Idris Elba in the film. And a bit terrifying, if I'm not gonna lie, a bit terrifying. As you can see, a very dapper looking cat.
Yeah.
In the trailers, we've only seen him briefly in the trailers for the film. Macavity, the mystery cat, set to be played by Idris Elba. Macavity is an evil cat who is no fan of the Jellicles. He's rumored to have romanced many of the Jellicle cats. There's some attraction, including Demeter and Bombalurina. A little heat going on there. He's also a criminal who may or may not have the power of teleportation.
Yep.
In many productions, there are decoy Macavity the Mystery Cats who pop up around the theater to make it seem like he can appear and disappear at will. Is this correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Depending on the production.
Depending on the production, there may be.
And in fact, in a lot of productions, the cats will go into the audience. Like there are cats that will sometimes like go and hang out in the audience.
I would hate that.
Most people do.
Traditionally, Macavity is described as a ginger tabby, but obviously the feature Macavity is going to don a fedora and a bit of a mysterious look in this new film adaptation. Now, Macavity does not traditionally have a singing part in the show, although we know that Idris Elba has a musical background.
Yeah, he at least raps. I don't know if he sings, but I know that he raps and he does DJing.
Well, maybe the cat will rap and DJ.
I need it, Dan.
Yeah.
Don't promise me that and then not give it to me.
I mean, the movie's promising it more than I am.
It really is.
Idris Elba reportedly based his interpretation of Macavity the Mystery Cat on Jack Nicholson. And this is maybe my favorite quote. He appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert not too long ago, and Stephen Colbert asked him to explain the plot of Cats. And this is what Idris Elba said, and I quote, "It's a classic. It's a big musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber. I guess it's about a cat."
Yes, you are right.
How am I doing? It's this young cat, and she gets sort of, taken on this story about how to get to cat heaven.
Yes.
Or what should you do to get into cat heaven?
Yes.
How am I doing? Does anyone know what the story is?
He's very close. So it's like a combination of a musical and almost like The Lottery, where where yes, all of the cats, you get a chance to go to cat heaven, and then I think you get to come back as like a better kind of cat, like maybe not like an alley cat. This is my understanding of the story. Like you go, and so the thing is they all have to figure out which of the Jellicles is gonna die, and they don't know. And so. Yeah, and so then when you die, you can, if you do the right things, you can come back as like maybe more of a domesticated cat and not like a cat that has to fend for itself.
So Danielle, we've covered we've met three cats on the show so far. Obviously, Macavity, the mystery cat, Buster Jones, our first cat, and Old Deuteronomy. Do you have a favorite of the three that we've met thus far?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have a favorite of the three. I don't have a favorite cats because all of them look awful and they just look like people in cat costumes. This is the joy of the movie and the joy of seeing the play. But at least like with the movie, because with plays, you can't just like leave.
Right.
But with a movie,
you can
just leave if you don't like it. Yep. But you will because it looks ridiculous.
Well,
so great.
I'm happy that you were here so that I could. Let's take one more look at him. Macavity the Mystery Cat, coming soon to a theater near you. And next week, we will introduce you to another cat from Cats.
Do you have any idea how excited I am that everyone in this office is excited for Cats?
it's palpable.
Yeah. You can feel.
That's not a joke.
It's not a joke.
Palpable.
We're all really excited for this movie.
The anticipation for cats around here is palpable. I just love, because I just look up names and then like I'll just pick the cat and then I'll go and look at who's playing them. Yeah. Like it's not like, oh, I want to see who Taylor Swift is playing, and then I look it up and then I'm like, that looks like a stupid name. I mean, interesting name. And then I do the thing. Yeah. So who knows what lay in store for us
How
next
many
week.
people could we fit at a table for the Cats review?
All of us. We're going to hang people from the ceiling if we have to. We're gonna do like the Area 51 thing and just like Naruto run into the screening, and everyone's getting in, and we're all gonna review it simultaneously.
Let's see them cats.
It's gonna be glorious. So there you go. That's this week's cat. I'm glad that you could meet McCavity the mystery cat with us.
He's gonna wear a fedora.
He's going to wear a fedora. Tune in next week to learn about more. Also, tune in next week to see what happens with the second week. What will happen with It Chapter 2? 2 new films hitting wide release this week. Hustlers, which has been, the buzz on this has been unexpectedly great.
Oscar buzz for J-Lo? Am I hearing this correctly?
Yeah, I think it's the early reviews have been really strong. And then conversely, premiering your film at a festival is a bit high stakes because you're already, by premiering it at a festival, I think you're sort of stamping this hope of prestige on it. Yeah. And then you have the creme de la creme as far as critics go, who are probably going to do the most or least for your film. There's a movie called The Goldfinch, which I think Warner Brothers had staked a lot of perhaps awards hopes. It certainly came in as a bit of a prestige film. Early reviews out of its festival premiere last night were not kind. No. So we'll see if that affects its opening weekend.
Have you ever felt bad for a movie? Because I did last night.
I mean, I haven't seen the film, so I don't know, but it certainly seemed like they had sharpened their claws.
Stop bullying! Stop bullying that poor movie. It
did seem like there was a bit of a Goldfinch pile-on, but maybe it's as bad as a lot of the critics have said. But also, a lot of times, when you come out of a film festival, those initial visceral reactions sometimes can be like just a gut punch. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see the Goldfinch, see compared to its early reviews, what happens with the film. I mean, it's a prestige cast. It's based off of, I think, a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. So we'll see what happens to the Goldfinch this week with critics and the theaters, Hustlers as well, and Pennywise and the Losers Gang and everything else at the box office. Danielle, thank you so much for joining me this week.
Thank you for having me. He wears a fedora, so you know he's sexy.
Exactly. If there's anything you take away from this episode, forget about all the box office stuff. Just remember that McCavity the mystery cat is going to be wearing a fedora. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Oh my God.